This is in response to Life, Liberty, and Levin, and his co-worker and their guest, and to everyone for humanity. Clearer than day, we have had campuses A through Z abridged, incapable of affording to be, let alone to protract, since semi-ancient times. Syntax by, let alone convictions with it, let alone convictions with guilt assignments, let alone leaving the breaching method out exactly the way it wanted and it needs. So, for example, at campuses A through Z, they have replaced what our founders, plural, communicated to us and about how we were directed to refer to them, plural, as James Madison, singular, and their use of his plan. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan and to help them counter extort the other third of our founders. Our founders are also, we were shown president slash chief in the Constitution unabridged. And we're supposed to get free speech. We haven't had it. And because interbranch are forging and switching names, roles of predicate acts with facts methods, that's all they're capable of doing at the same time. The difference of that, also the difference of that, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, names that next to all natures of crime scenes, campuses. They are increasingly collusion slash us with that. There are people named Joe DeMoro and Weathersfield and Rocky Hill. I don't know what other cities they're associated with. More than one person with the name Joe DeMoro. And there's a person named Tony DeMoro, who recorded, expressed, demonstrated, confirmed there's families with fire departments and with Hartford Hospital involved with a Jody Pierce near a Weathersfield Community Center, with people on all sides of the Weathersfield Community Center, have roles with a whole bunch of different countries, and people involved right now with Winter Branch that have been forging and switching names before the World Trade Center attack. They have roles of predicate acts with facts. And since it, intercities, intra-cities, intercampuses, and intra-campuses. And within has a whole bunch of names tied to the same ones that recorded, putting me fake ties, fake natures of ties to themselves and to others. Increasingly involved, I caught them too with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart. Increasingly, these are ties between names next to Hartford Hospital through time, including just traveling by. There are a whole bunch of people involved with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, have collusions intercities and intra-cities, intercampuses and intra-campuses, acting while others put predicate acts with facts in databases, fake ties and fake natures of ties, including on campuses filmed 24/7. They're changing and faking, just putting fake transcripts, including at medical campuses, including at campuses where there are young adults that are basically still kids. And so are the adults there. Before one can't understand America if they can't allow honesty regarding the extortion of George Washington and regarding the founders, plural, which are distinct from our presidents, plural. Someone could say, well, president's a founder too. Well, we were directed to refer to our founders as James Madison and his plan before George Washington was the first president. They had slavery entrenched, northern colonies and southern colonies, and they had roles with it. Otherwise, that body was sentenced. And they had internationally monitored conversations. It wasn't distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies. I learned that there were more than 13. But whatever anyone learns, we know that the databases were criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought. And they still are. They refuse to identify themselves interbranch legitimately. Increasingly with people from other areas that planted evidences on my street, predicate acts roles, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and interbranch forging and switching names, falsified police reports, stacking fake things in databases. And Wethersfield Police, at the Wethersfield Police Station, they pretended they had conversations with me as a kid, and then when I was an adult. These are people increasingly involved with the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices of Connecticut, involved also with names next to the World Trade Center, including a court next to it, Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan, New York, right before the World Trade Center attack. WFSB sought me out, trying not to pretend other. Still, in other words, they attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others, and about the World Trade Center attack. And they attached me to fake locations with themselves and others. And they did this while they were forcing child abusers, foreign and domestic, involved with, including medical, sexual, overt criminal enterprises at the same time, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and former police chiefs from Wethersfield, a police chief, Cintron, and his family members. There are people involved with a Mazzucato bakery and a modern pastry that have been planting evidences with retired police chiefs and people, all along and next, even with conjunctions to campuses, including Harvard Hospital. It has something to do with their roles with the corner of streets on Elm Streets in Wethersfield and in Rocky Hill, years before Mazzucato Bakery was there. And I think they're still at the other place on Franklin Avenue, which goes right by Harvard Hospital's campus, with the Institute of Living on it, founded in 1822, with slavery still entrenched, with still roles, measuring and maintaining. Still, they have roles communicating, or they replaced the human fact, true nature breaching method right from James Madison's, right from our founders' communications to us. They didn't have free speech. They declassified this. There were crazy laws entrenched, and there were layers of roles with it. Otherwise, that body was censored, including if that body was a majority of people, including if that body was everybody, and that was adapted to. They try to overcome it properly, syntactically. This breaching method needs people to blame other things, others ourselves, as individuals, as groups, as group differences that have been appreciated, and as voicings for humanity, the human species body of individual bodies. We have been systems tactical ulterior from its own that generates all differences. See, now we have a hyper breaching, we have a hyper simultaneous nature that's not just nature. There's an additional name from A through Z. That nature itself, I'm not a lawyer. Nature itself shows us to call this a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. The proverbial devil, the proverbial shaitan. So in other words, before John Adams is the second president. And still, even though James Madison wasn't the president yet, it was his founding plan. No one knew how to count had roles with slavery. Therefore, everyone was fact, true nature, slave. Therefore, physically, all exceptions, exception nature, they had to pretend other with it too, and keep other things, others themselves, besides the breaching method, blamed for things that nature itself shows us. A human fact, true nature breaching method is one of the things that those values, that all those laws, as the colonies laws, as colonial times now, and the early times, through the states, we know that the Constitution has been read abridged. We don't things that appear to be debatable are gotten away with, pretending they are debatable when they are not. In other words, it's not debatable. I'm not even a lawyer. If we have black people's rights of eyes, we know that it's about a human fact, true nature, predicate acts with facts, delivery system method, organized crime method worse than war crimes, and rolls with it. self-valued, or otherwise that is sense. And the reason it's self-valued is because while it had rolls all these crazy things, no one was watching. Well, I have that's all these things more and more that no one wanted collusions with, but it made exceptions. And then rationalizing that, and everyone's missing its name's roles with this. Not just the human fact, human nature breaching method as a scientific value. Two, again, by nature, replaced right from nature's communications to us and our founders. If we pay attention to, they didn't have free speech. How could anyone? Everyone wants the nature debate. Oh, how could they not free speech? They put up the Constitution. That's an old argument. Only got away with people from backgrounds. That's not real. We pay attention. People are using evidences that are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought, fact, human nature, quiet aspects of nature as criminal insidious. That's criminally foreign influence nature of calmness or of aggression. Definitions of order as systems tactical ulterior from nature's how it is positive onto itself. It is the order of the finite or the smallest finite detail. It is the difference of that. It is the why and how. We only know an extent of truth /s. Active now. Grouped. And we only know. And we know an extent, like we know about the value of the seasons that aren't even here now. With that, we are shown its identity, to an extent, its identity relationship to itself, in the only increasing value of that. And that's why of the value of the seasons, even if they never get here, their value is only increasing. But now it is through systems tactical ulterior than its own, including treatments of the nature of debate regarding that, or the relativity of it. Everyone's looking for fault. Right where science shows us, don't leave out the breaching method. Especially in America regarding, you guys have our founders framed in self-valued roles. That is manifest because where and how at countries A through Z, everyone is speaking about economies, tactical ulterior from how our founders told us to. Valuing how the breaching method told them to get away with that. Shell game. Valuing it, they're not even realizing too, you haven't been used remote. People passionately charged as capitalism, people are passionately charged as socialism, people are passionately charged as communism. There are proofs that ancient pantheism was to stay not stuck with isms, even through its own, be led by the hyper-invisible but still discernible. That which is true always. Who denies that black people having black pupils, whites of eyes, and knowing about witch trials, and knowing about how there's a witch trials place right next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, though, right, as one of the places George Washington had to come, like Hartford, Connecticut, Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, again, with our founder's plan, James Madison's. And this is important because even when he was a president, he still didn't have free speech. And this is important because every leader, no matter how powerful they become of a country, as long as the locations, areas, and states are right, really why and how they are suits and ties, counters, and exceptions, they've gotten away with pretending passions and emotions, or calmness, legitimately. The legitimately of calmness, too, or natures of order, definitions of it. There are distinct identities of order, so we can discern the identity of nature. It is why and how the parts of speech are the invisible but still discernible. Anyone wants to debate that, their debate is going to have demonstrations of the same. People say, when they say they could say that about anyone, but that's why we have to stay led by what is true always. It's a difference if someone's saying about it. If someone, in other words, if someone makes the principle, if someone debates the principle, the means of having black people as white survivors, that left out, especially if you know, because they don't have Americans knowing about what James Madison's communicated, even though it's declassified. And the same thing at China. How could they be honest about the leaders past? Well, in other words, before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions wrought, there are proofs that humanity was led by the identity of hyper invisible but still discernible as an identity of value/value progression that comes with means to create means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures out of nowhere. But it also requires vigorously understanding the nature, the difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positive. How to make, like, there are criminal insidiousness natures of peace, and that alone is and has been evidences. But our countries A through Z, they speak about formal evidences, where and how, like just with witch trials, even when they bring up the subject, they left out the laws that were simultaneously entrenched. They left out the human fact chief nature of breaching them that they are equivalently value as black beings. So we agree about things in America. There are pollings of there are polling locations like Quinnipiac University has rules with various natures of organized crimes with people throughout Connecticut, people involved with Yukon, involved also with medicines crimes with Hartford Hospital, in ways that with the mental health care side, they're faking evidences with various police forms and groups and initiatives. The Eastern States Narcotics Drugs Task Force, is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with a whole bunch of people tied to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, their family members, and a bunch of people at Hartford Hospital with foreign and domestic military involved with the World Trade Center attack, and with people named Leahy, who also, not like there's a Brendan Leahy, and I believe his father's name is Brendan Leahy too. And I believe that's the guy. I only have one word. I would say yes, sarcastically to him at Hartford Hospital. Only word I ever had with any Leahy. In other words, I saw one in school before. I'm not, because they were trying to fish through what I said on Facebook, and they were changing and faking what I said through time. And then I caught them with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and they have their own kids involved with the pictures of the principal upskirt nature's picture and rolls with New Britain Superior Court with their Facebook pages with it. Their Facebook pages, and they made a whole bunch of other Facebook pages. Also within that is people tied to, I don't know if it was her. I don't even know her. She's one of the ones they made a fake exception when I was in seventh grade. Increasingly, people tied to former mayors from Wethersfield. And that was a Celeste Wells. I don't even know if that's her real name. And these are people also associated with, like, people associated with mayors from Wethersfield, like a former mayor Gold. And an algebra class teacher I had has roles of people who have been planting evidence on all sides of my house. As roles with the police forms that have been forging and switching names and refusing to identify themselves legitimately. Also within as collusions with people within as people with retired police chiefs. And I don't know about, I don't even know. I never had, they attached me fake conversations with the police when I was a kid and then as an adult, and at the police station. Wasn't at all. They put me fake ties, fake natures of ties to people involved with the intelligence community a whole bunch of different ways. Where they confess things to complete strangers when they're covering things up. like their roles with child abuse is very mixed natures of organized crimes, where they don't legitimately have like that's what they have roles with when they're trying to put all these people undercover or whatever they're doing with their standing, rap mob and pretending other people are acting too. Sequence shifts. In other words, they're just attached. They attach me to fake transcripts at the court since I was a kid. They won't get on paper. This is not just against me. These are locations used remotely at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and a whole bunch of other countries with the same problems there, where there's hyper criminal foreign influences, and everyone's only capable of blaming it on criminal foreign influences or worse. Otherwise, that body is sentenced through their own people, including America. The colonies, sickly distinctly, north and south too, non-distinctly, they had roles with slavery. And our founders told us to get the Constitution unabridged. So how could we have had free speech and the Constitution unabridged? And why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. Appreciated, let alone while there's still collusion /S. All kinds of natures of organized crimes and methods, like wire and mail crime methods, have to be, addressed first. Then we'll address their roles with all kinds of medicines crimes, which are no drug crimes. The same countering bodies, because they've been using phenomena, so anomaly associated with this. There are a whole bunch of people that work at Harvard Hospital involved with intelligence families that used to live near me, and the ones involved further with a Phil Colo is the cousin of theirs, and ones with the name Scalora, who have roles with the World Trade Center predicate acts, and with some police named Mendez, who are involved with the ones involved with attaching me to fake conversations with themselves. And at the police station when I was a kid and then as an adult. They were I don't even know where they live. I don't know where they lived when they were kids. They're involved with wire crime action methods that are also manifest where and how, and is also recorded where and how all natures of investigators and their campuses are being and have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought. So to come to any of these, in other words, so obviously, John Adams was extorted, tortured, in fact, human nature enslaved, therefore physically, by a breaching method. But he was also having to be collusion. With nature and with James Madison's plan to counter what no one was forbid, nature also positive onto itself. In other words, this breaching method made at countries A through Z before Columbus even came to America, made the phenomenon of the people of this continent, the phenomenon of what is now America and Mexico. It made everyone take part of value nature systems because it tactically denatured the ground. We know this. The nature of debate, though, regarding this and everything contains quality aspects of nature till we can observe. We can all observe. We all have the means to that are criminally pointable tactical delusions raw and keeping the same outcome /S. Right where and how they're used remotely, countries A through Z. To defend America, all we have to do is tell the truth. Our founders wanted to break this system that is evil, and that we're supposed to be pursued to ties conflicts. In other words, our campuses A through Z are being and have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw, from off those campuses. And that was hyper-additionally from that which everyone had collusion /S with at all locations /S, everywhere the human species body is and was. Otherwise, that body was in his sense, including if that body is a majority of people, including if it was everyone from the phenomena of the phenomena of a country's name that can only be operated by locations, areas, and states' voices. In other words, and that's exploited by the breaching method that is discernible as a hyper-additional name, beginning with the discernment of it, beginning with how just first discernible as a scientific value, as one of the things true always. The laws were valued as before our founders were born, and through their lifetimes, only because they did not have free speech, only because of all exceptions and exception nature too. They had to explain that tactically ulterior than how they wanted to, and which is how nature wanted and needs us too, as the human species body of individual bodies, with all group differences, demonstrating its hyper-invisible but still discernible body of conjunction, of hyperconjunction, of conjunction / hyperconjunction rather, to all parts of an invisible but still discernible parts of speech, of English grammar, of other languages. This is the identity that values as its own the sciences. Like, for example, why and how English is valuing the predicate simultaneously, why and how, as why and how the law is valuing the predicate act. There are predicate acts and predicate acts methods that were and are much more evil than the little kids and adults that were sent to jails. There are proofs they even fake that too. They have people they say, in other words, man, a lot of fake things in databases and roles that have never gone away. In other words, so there's a Joshua Julian who's on the Facebook page of the campuses with some judges and prosecutors involved with also foreign and domestic medical families, including military, including with the Marines involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and falsified news, and World Trade Center predicate acts. And I don't know all their names. A bunch of people tied to a Ray Colon and his father, Ray Colon, are also with the Joshua Julian between social media platforms, with the judges and prosecutors with sexual and medical offenders, also with their cousins involved. Phil Colon is involved with the upskirt nature principle, with a Bob Chase, with Whiting Forensics, also with the Facebook, with digital crimes, with them, with the Facebook pages. And I believe it's a Celeste Wells. And I believe these are people that have roles with the yearbook. Also with their putting, as people that have collusion / S with sequence shifts and with people on off the state corrections offices, on off the state judicial branch offices. And that next to old Wethersfield founding locations, still interpreted criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought. Specifically, too, if that's addressed, people change and fake what we say regarding it, regarding predicate acts, because that's predicate acts with facts rules. But you guys have mass predicate acts with facts rules, where and how anyone tries to use the hyper-evidential, like having black people's white spies, means to discern a breaching method reassigned with nature communicates. At least when nature is positive onto itself and not criminal insidious as nature, only as nature. And it shows us nature that we are not appreciating its a special difference, our own, and Earth's. So it is forced from here. When we are not valuing it here, and as it here, it is forced from here, not as death, but as a quality of diffusion, where more and more positive, also positive onto itself, is being made. See, we could stay systems tactical ulterior from its own, the identity of all space/existence, the identity that is showing us our species didn't invent how we have two eyes, because other species' bodies have two eyes too. So all exceptions, exception nature, that where we might have invented part of it, that comes with demonstration / that's the same thing. But see, now those demonstrations are through systems tactical ulterior from its own. How it wants us to appreciate syntactically, to value short words, not to change them. Nature itself wants us not to change the words of anyone who says those laws that were entrenched. In other words, in subject treatment, leaving out black people's whites of eyes from subject treatments like subjects like slavery, like modern history, clearer than day, a breaching method consciously reassigned and made self-value roles not right where it wasn't self-value, and it isn't self-value. Too, just to hide behind that too, because it's got styles, like speaking about economies, leaving out all the ways that the natures of industries, where and how we know they have, okay, well, this is the context, is not our job, so we can't go into slavery and this thing, obviously. But in other words, there are exceptions. You guys aren't supposed to change and fake what people say, let alone offensively fake conversations about the World Trade Center. So a whole bunch of intelligence families from Wethersfield, one's on Morgan Circle and Valley Crest in Wethersfield, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed their roles with my neighbors with houses on Church Street in Old Wethersfield and on Main Street. And there's a Daryl Chandler. I don't know his family's name. He's got a sister. I don't know her name. They're involved with a Ray Colo and a Joe DeMoro. Involved with a bunch of intelligence families that have been involved with identity theft, frauds, and slanders with them. Also with their educators. And DeMoro and Daryl Chandler sought me out as a stranger to confess, record, demonstrate, confirm their roles with Korean, or South Korea, or South Korea, or whatever they're doing, because they're with the military too, apparently. I don't know them. He's one. I just know that he planted evidences with Joe DeMoro, and then years later with the Ray Colo, and collusions with sequence chefs and people tied to them, like a Robert Rodriguez, who made confirmations on Facebook about his roles with untimely deaths of my neighbors and making confessions to me to make it look like he knew me on my street, right before, and brought up the principal child abusers campus to me when it was still being forced. I recorded them forcing child abusers of kids and crime methods they use, like having the person hang up real fast and then having the person call back, leave a whole bunch of messages, say a whole bunch of fake, more additional fake things and crime acts, make more confessions, and then never let the person speak and then pretend they spoke. How could you not spoke? There's all those phone calls. They're using that kind of crime methods too. And increasingly with retired police chiefs and their intimate ties, involved with the 80 Carriage Hills Drive, involved with 2 Ray Colos, people with the name Ray Colo, involved with a bunch of people at Hartford Hospital, involved with a Kevin Dillon and Anna Dillon. There's reports also of a Thomas Dillon. I know none of them. I just recognized the Kevin Dillon because he made nonverbal confirmations to me and demonstrations of others. That's how they communicate. Him and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, too, is involved with a bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News through time. Involved with a bunch of probate court judges, family members, and their family members with on-off 2-route highway locations and where it runs into Hangdog Lane and the Berlin Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. They also have those 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike, which is also a town line. These are people involved with the town lines, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidences racketeering, like worse than war crimes roles, with differences too. These are people with wire crime acts and methods, and digital crimes at Wethersfield Police, who are also involved with the businesses and houses next to Hartford Hospital through time, involved with them also with drugs and medicines crimes, and countering bodies to that. These are also Joe DeMoro and Ray Colo have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with others. People at the corrections offices of Wethersfield and next to it, involved with 2 speech class teachers I had in high school, involved also with students and adults that are increasingly recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I never had a personal conversation with either of those teachers. They have roles of people from Washington, D.C. and the World Trade Center that are involved with increasingly people all along from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield, all along from Main Street, Old Wethersfield, and the conjunctions to it, all along Route 175, up, right through Wethersfield, through Newington, and to Central Connecticut State University, and names on all sides of that. Adjuster Levinskis is one of the people that sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. His family was involved with abuses of girls that went to my grammar school, and his roles with the former Mayor Gold, lying to me about that. They don't even know them. You know, his abuse of them was by making them roles with various natures of organized crimes in their kids, because then they're repeating fake things, including when of them. Sometimes it's themselves, sometimes it's the police force, sometimes it's the political families, but they're at the same time at timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and a whole bunch of different countries at the campuses they are involving. Central Connecticut State University has a bunch of intelligence tied to it as a Detective Samuda. I never had a word of conversation with him. He switched names with another officer named he used the name Magnanos. Involved also with others in his family with the intelligence, with East Hartford intelligence locations, involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, like a Don LeConte. I never had a word of conversation with a Don LeConte in my life. Heather Hansen and Joe DeMoro, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. She's involved with them with various natures of federal crimes in my area, and home break-ins, intercities, and with people with the judges and prosecutors switching and forging names as roles with that. And they had time roles with untimely deaths, overt criminal enterprises, and private ones. John DeMoro sought me out to make rape confessions too. Made up or not, remember, that has something to do with Mr. Abruzzi. Central Connecticut State University also sought me out. And people before I was in Mr. Abruzzi's class, they were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. People and things associated with the Mr. Abruzzi are involved with a DeMoro family and with the former mayors from Wethersfield, and people tied to their neighbors, and as their neighbors and their family members, and involved also with other natures of politicians at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, putting predicate acts in databases, with behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. They're putting fake motivations for it at the same time, and that's recorded. But they've been faking and changing what's recorded. That's when they had to hide that. That's why how the Wethersfield police are hiding this also with judges out of the state judicial branch offices, regardless if they are higher ranking than Judge Napolitano. They have remote uses of his sense and sensibilities relative to their changing and having changed evidences and pretending other. These are people involved after the World Trade Center attack with WFSB that recorded World Trade Center attack predicate acts roles after the World Trade Center attack, which simultaneously recorded their collusion /S with the Saudi attackers and people who had time roles at the World Trade Center and next to the spots next to the World Trade Center the day of the attack against me, interstates and intercities and intracities, and the same ones tied to them are the ones involved with the war crimes of the Wethersfield police, forging and switching names, refusing to get on paper, refusing to identify themselves legitimately, making confessions and walking away, including in the form of statements. Let's get them on paper, one name in sequence. They have fire departments involved too. And they're influencing the people to pretend others simultaneously too. Because they want to make it neat, pretend people's all their differences, it's this, that. They're leaving themselves out. And Harvard Hospital has a whole bunch of ways, whole bunch of fire department families, also from other areas, also involved with predicate acts on my street, all sides of my house. Increasingly, people tied to it as a Paul Abted. I never had a word of conversation with a Paul Abted. He has a sister involved and others with the Harvard Hospital involved with foreign and domestic intelligence families, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and sexual and medical offenders of elderly, not just of little kids, and of veterans. These are sick. You see the design of the veterans buildings. It's relative to where and how they got away with pretending, with the people in the backgrounds that we don't even see inside those huge mass stacked buildings in New York City because they can't even walk out at the same time. There's problems, and no one can grow anything. The suburbs are tactically to nature, designed before America's founders were born by a torture, extortion, fact, human nature, slavery method. This is not even debatable. It's gotten away with being debatable because our sciences have been led at campuses A through Z. They showed you guys how to debate criminally foreign, valuing criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature, like your premises treatments, your sequence value. In other words, you guys are debating things you're not supposed to debate can change and prevent us short words. Like regarding it offensively. So WFSB and intelligence families next to them through time. I don't even know all their names. A whole bunch of people tied me and everyone around me to fake and changed communications with themselves and with others. And these are increasingly people that lied to my family members about me. In other words. And then so they lie about me too. That give them, forgiveness because they're trying to do that too. But they won't get anyone on paper. These are people that changed what my family communicated and what the courts communicated regarding World Trade Center relative court cases, interstates. WFSB has roles with all kinds of evidences racketeering, with a Trantolo and Trantolo too, all kinds of wire and mail crime methods, and with the FBI and the state police. A whiting forensics in Middletown is increasingly confessing, demonstrating, recording. They have a Bob Chase and a Phil Cololo involved with continual crimes on my street with kids too, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, digital crimes too, with their changing and faking, which is digitally recorded. They're getting involved with the instances between kids where they create those instances to put fake change natures of ties to be kids, and to have the future, to have those kids either try to speak about, I don't know, they're putting fake ties, why, fake motivations for why they have people around each other. And then they're trying to do fake exceptions too, because while they're shown they have to do that, they already use remotely criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought. So Judge Napolitano, get the Judge Killian too, but we'll get the other ones first with this Leahy family, the other judges, and prosecutors. There's a Brian Silver involved with him too, attaching me to fake conversation with them at Harper Hospital. They have a bunch of people at a bunch of ways involved with the Wethersfield Community Center and the Wethersfield Town offices and the Wethersfield Judicial Branch offices and the Wethersfield Corrections offices involved with this. Increasingly, educators and security people associated with Wethersfield Pizza House have been planting evidences with them. Also with Maria Fazzino, with New Haven, Connecticut, with FBI and whoever. They should try to make a fake exception of knowing me there in New Haven. with multiple courts and the people on off the state judicial branch offices have increasingly roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And I never saw Maria Pazina on a Weathersfield campus in my life. Her name and Joshua Julian's name was repeated to me by Mark Violet, involved with other people next to where the Weathersfield police are now and where they used to be. Increasingly involved with the Mark Violet, with the O'Brien family too, with some KKK theme, black theme, Latino theme, Italian theme. Identity theft, fraud, slander, differences, racketeering roles, worse than war crimes. And with my neighbors, Mark Violet and Joshua Stryker, and there's a whole bunch of people tied to Ray Claw said that Joshua Stryker is involved with him too, and Ray Claw with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. Put me fake conversations with Joshua Stryker. It wasn't even my grade. I didn't have a conversation in my life. They tried to make a fake exception of me knowing him. I still never had a conversation with him. They want to have a conversation about what I said about that on Facebook. Criminally pointed, they already faked and changed digital evidences. These are strangers that sought me out to make fake exceptions. Eric Oliveri and Craig Oliveri have roles with people with the intelligence at UPS, at the other shipping locations, even Coca-Cola, and back at people's homes and next to them at corners of streets. They have people with Coca-Cola shipping and the post office and their family members, increasingly tied to a Joshua Julian, also involved with neighbors of a Jeremy Grove as one of the houses next to the community center. And people on his street, he said, are involved with the Joshua Stryker. And his role, and they're friends with the brother of a Justin Kovinskis. I never met him. Justin Kovinskis is one of the ones that sought me out as a stranger with Mark Violet on my street to confess in court. They have also religious spots, the ones associated with relatives of mine too, that were involved with the World Trade Center attack spot too. And I never had communications with them. They're repeating fake things of others. In other words, using truths for lies and hiding what's involved with Yale Street and Hartford, with the intelligence communities intercities, planting evidences before the World Trade Center attack and since it, also with the news. A whole bunch of people tied to Gail King are involved with Gary Sasso on one side of Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. Also with people, Tanya Gill, Kyle Gill, and their mother and father, Jose Gill. I forgot his mother's name. Not even know. I didn't even ask her. She just made a whole bunch of confessions in front of me. And she has roles with the spots next to the other spots there too, next to Central Connecticut State University where they live. I don't know if it says working because they have roles with the intelligence that works at Central Connecticut State University is also part of their families. They have foreign and domestic families involved with differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes. Also with some KKK, black theme, Latino theme, everything. The difference of it, they have the passion people with the religions and the counters to it, and the atheists. They have time collusions with difference, racketeering, planting evidences, and federal crimes with the FBI director Robert Luskin, with the Dean Judd and his kid, and people associated with body dumping spots, a serial killer and other body dumping spots, different murders, including if all those were made up. The reported killers too are involved, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded roles with the war crime acts and methods of the FBI and the other police departments involved with Weathersfield Police. Attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and now as an adult. They are recorded, confessed, demonstrating, confirming that they are offensively lying about what they think when I speak online to prevent writing, to prevent the right outcome in any nature of case. These are people that this is why and how they got away with so long, pretending that they can't discern the impositions upon the kids of New York City, let alone the adults who already had that sustained on them. Then they're going to have that blamed on them when they have the still rat trap campuses still, sickly distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly. They all have success as their motive. Oh, where do you want success? Look at the numbers. In other words, they have success or torture, extortion, and slavery, including if it's success. Because in other words, that's why they're jumping and changing and faking what we say. Facebook has increasingly roles personally, criminally foreign influence the World Trade Center predicate acts, and with syntax regarding extremism, putting it into my writing to make it seem as other. And they were getting away with that because these are the ones involved with the various courts, all sides of the cases in the courts, and their state judicial branch offices and corrections offices, planting collusions with names next to the crime scenes too, including with the news note. All natures of crime scenes and locations. This is a breaching and message that has the sensibilities of people. They attach me to fake. Increasingly, people tied to my family, lied to my family members, put me fake ties, fake natures of ties to themselves. Some of them tried to make fake exceptions by tricking me to be in a car and then take a picture like a Mike Del Ferro and a John Del Ferro, or a Chris Del Ferro and a Mike Del Ferro, and they have other brothers, like 2 or 3 other brothers, maybe 4. I don't know. I don't even know their names. They have a father involved who made confessions about a probate court judge and their family years later. Because I noticed that there were people from other areas. I don't know their names at all. I never figured out who they were. Tied also to the people from other areas that came to my street and made confessions to me. And they're putting fake ties to people in databases at campuses. Fake natures of ties to people too. People that aren't even in classes. And they're building upon that. Intercities and intra-cities. Increasingly, intelligence families with Central Connecticut State University in Britain, Connecticut. When I was a kid, now since I was a kid, in Wethersfield, Connecticut, they have collusions with people with names where I live and names where I used to live on all sides of it. And they were timed use /S for that also recorded as the families involved with phone companies. There are people with the name Spotter and Chris Walters. And they said that there's people with Central Connecticut State University. I don't even know these people. They'll tell you. I just showed up there one time with a Eric Jensen and Ray Reynolds are also increasingly involved with state police and people and intelligence families near me, involved with child offenders and co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Robert Luskin himself. And their lawyer and their neighbors are involved in intercities. People with Newington Police Department and fire departments associated with intercity fire departments associated with Eric Jensen will court confess, demonstrate, confirm. He was in other words, people with the state police spot on the Berlin Turnpike and along the Berlin Turnpike rolls with state police. As ones involved interstates with state police and people with Mexico, Venezuela, Canada. These are people involved with the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime. But these are also people next to Harvard Hospital. There have been Harvard Hospital's campus, no. There have been roles of predicate acts with other campuses. There is someone with the name Bayrock or used the name Bayrock who was a black kid. I don't even know. I just only saw him one time in life. In other words, he attacked me the one time I saw him at Wethersfield campus. He's one of the ones involved with the Bayrock. There's a street named Bayrock off of Wrought Highway. And there's a Kevin Dillon. And people, a bunch of people from Harvard Hospital said there's a Kevin Dillon, and there's people with the name Casper and Yagman involved with them with crimes with drugs and medicines with kids, and they've been used in the hospitals like mental health evaluations. the families of the judges and prosecutors, the families of the judges involved with that. They also have personal and professional roles with other judges and prosecutors from other natures of courts involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time, and with the houses and businesses next to Harvard Hospital, as ones increasingly involved with predicate acts on my street from other areas. And there were time use / us with that roles. That's why the police make these confessions on the phone regarding the name Kalo, but they don't bring up the whole name. And that's why the Whiting forensics brought up the name Phil Kalo in their confessions. And regarding a police report I still haven't seen. And then they add that they add a bunch of different falsified police reports and narratives, and they never give you one to respond to. None of them have writing or real evidences, and they attach hyper-additional different police officers were there in narratives. They're just totally fake. So these are people involved with, since before Fox News fired Judge Napolitano, they were trying to hide this because of the locations, areas, and states in the federal. And the difference of that was is used remotely criminally foreign influence too, where things have been appreciated syntactically. Only through criminal foreign influence, tactically, delusions wrong. Boxing is fought, but by the rules. But the rules have been abridged since semi-ancient times. So we have not. Observe how a fighting as fact-achieving nature would have revealed the human species bodies, individual bodies. Longing, means, and needs. Means out of nowhere. We are fact-achieving, means to cause evolutions, fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. This is principle, James Madison. No one can be honest about. That's why everyone wants to have a nature debate. Well, this is that. The evil was roles with everyone, including all group differences, including everyone of any colony or state, any country even, any grouping of countries while as this being and having been used remotely. Criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence. Because there's that distinct nature of criminal foreign influences that had other countries and companies and roles with it, like with slavery entrenched, distinctly southern colonies, but also non-distinctly southern and not northern colonies. And there were more than 13. But this is not clear, not because people haven't done their homework, because the books have been criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought. All exceptions, exception nature too. That exploited, they need that fake too. They are showing other needs and means to this. Not legitimate science spoke, not one. Please, there's a Judging Freedom YouTube channel with a Judge Napolitano. Please let me get heard by him. Because the police forms and the courts use wire and mail crimes in other countries, and they refuse to get on paper. And they already faked conversations with me at the police station when I was a kid and now I was an adult. And the FBI has worse than criminal incompetence with it. So we're going to have to do our communications on here, online about this. And these are World Trade Center predicate acts. And you guys are forcing me to write a map because that's what you guys brought up when you brought all these names in. And you also have people that faked in the fake conversations with me. They pretend I said everyone was evil. We're gonna examine how worse than criminal incompetence as being speaking for the sciences, the names of the people of the sciences, how they have been stayed from off their locations. Collusion / S with what keeps that hyper-additional sick and replacing what our founders and what nature communicates to us. We don't leave out how we have black people as white survive and revelations here, while other told is forced, and yet and still religion will be trial tribes. I send you vibes. Who disbelieves?